Good afternoon and welcome to the Economic Standing Policy Committee for March 15th. It is good afternoon, yes it is. And if, Madam City Clerk, if I can have a roll call, please.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Higgin. Councillor Carlson.
Present.
Councillor Croson.
Present.
Councillor Dodick. I think
Absent.
he's out. Councillor Middleton Hope.
Present.
Councillor Palladino.
Present.
Acting Mayor Schmidt-Rempel.
Here.
Mayor Parker.
Here.
Mayor Higgin. And Councillor Campbell.
Present.
All present except for Councillor Dodick. Thank you.
City of Lethbridge acknowledges that we're gathered on the lands of the Blackfoot people of the Canadian Plains and pays respect to the Blackfoot people, past, present, and future, while recognizing and respecting their cultural heritage, beliefs, and relationship to the land. City of Lethbridge is also home to the Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 3. Have a resolution from Acting Mayor Schmidt-Rempel, adoption of agenda. Be it resolved that the agenda of the Economic Standing Policy Committee meeting on March 15th, 2023 be adopted as presented. Acting Mayor.
Thank you very much. Madam City Clerk, do we have any changes?
We have one revision to the agenda. Item 7.1, the Lethbridge and District Exhibition Project update will be in public. That will be in conjunction with 5.1. Thank you.
Amended, I guess. Okay. With that,
I'll call the vote.
question's been called. All in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you. And I have a resolution from Deputy Mayor Parker. Consent agenda be resolved that the minutes of the Economic Standing Policy Committee meeting held on February 15th, 2023 be approved and Mayor and City Clerk be authorized to sign the same. Further be resolved that the status of initiatives for March 15th, 2023 be received as information. Deputy Mayor.
Nothing to add to that, Mr. Mayor, so I'll call the question.
Question's been called. All in favor? Okay. Passes. All right, next we have Mr. Warkentin, CEO of Lethbridge and District Exhibition, and Abby Slovak, I think, is here as well. Mike, if you wanted to pop up, and the floor is yours to give us some great news about the Lethbridge and District Exhibition. I hope it's all good news, of course, right?
That's right.
Good.
Excellent. Thank you for having me. It's great to be back as always. Which one are we doing first? We have two presentations. They look the same on the first page.
That's where you...
Okay, thank you. Sorry. Apologize for the confusion. It's our annual financial update from our AGM. And so looking back, a little bit of a precursor to 2022 fiscal year, we were optimistic going into 2022. Right around the time we were building the budget for fiscal 22 was the fall of 2021. We were coming off of an open summer. The COVID rates were going significantly down and things were beginning to open back up. However, just if you could switch, please. Sorry. Right at the time, we saw the masking mandate come back in September, actually right during our Whoop Up Days celebration. That was, that had been moved back to Labor Day of 2021, and then our planning into 2022. We maintained that optimism, but as we turned the corner actually to our fiscal year in November of 2022, of 21, which is the start of our fiscal year, the Omicron virus hit. And so what we saw was a significant drop in the number of our holiday bookings that we traditionally see, and really the majority of our major events, including the Western Tractor event in early January, as well as the Alberta Food and Beverage Show, were both deferred out of that first quarter. Both of those events traditionally give us a pretty significant boost to our financials. What this also did is it reduced our capacity and our ability to bring vendors in for the big Christmas market. That started a really tough year for our signature events. Our attendance was down, our occupancy from vendors was down. However, we continued to trudge on, and in December of 2021, which is the second month of our fiscal year, we saw the first steel erected You'll see there in the bottom right-hand corner for the building. That continued throughout the year. For Ag Expo, our planning had been in earnest since the start of the year, and because of the COVID restrictions, we were limited to the number of exhibitors that we could have, as well as the width of our aisles and the number of people we could have. As fate would have it for us, those COVID restrictions actually lifted on the 28th of February, the night before Ag Expo. But in terms of the vendor count and the setup of the show, we obviously couldn't adapt to include more vendors. And so Ag Expo was the lightest financial year we had seen. And this particular event is the stalwart of our financial calendar. It really buoys traditionally our entire financial year. The Home and Garden Show, again, we made best efforts we could in that month to put as many new vendors as we could in, but we saw the lowest vendor count of that show and one of the lowest attendance we've seen at that show in many years. And so what happened through our main signature event season is they were all down in number of vendors, which is where we see the most of our revenue. And then our attendees were also down. So there was a double whammy on our events. And as such, we've made some pretty significant changes to how we manage our events. In May of 2022, however, one of the best aspects of our year was the farmers market, both on site as well as downtown. We saw over 54,000 visitors through the farmers market, so it continues to be one of the best community elements we have, as well as one of the best connection points we have to our brand. Major focus last year was put on our Indigenous programming, as well as bringing back the Lethbridge and District Pro Rodeo. You'll remember an exceptionally warm and dry summer that ended exactly the night before the Whoop Up Days parade. And for those 5 days, we saw some record rainfalls. Our rodeo saw a 40-minute postponement with 4 inches of rain in 20 minutes and flooding of our midway. Those images have certainly been circulated around the community. And we estimate that because of the weather we saw during Whoop Up Days, that event by itself took about a $50,000 to $70,000 hit. However, there were some certain wins. Obviously, the return of Pro Rodeo was exceptionally welcomed in southern Alberta, as well as the rodeo community. The Siksika Sitapi Powwow was the first of our Indigenous offerings, which also included the Siksika Sitapi Princess Pageant, as well as our warrior races following the rodeo, which ultimately were probably the biggest storyline and biggest hit of our entire Whoop Up Days programming. And then lastly, last fall, we were actually here at this committee talking about our advocacy efforts, and our federal advocacy started in earnest in September when we started going monthly to Ottawa, which has, we've seen significant takeaways from that. But ultimately, in summary, 2022 was, you have the financials as part of your package. 2022 was a transition year. It was one that we saw with a lot of optimism going into it, that we were coming out of the COVID pandemic. However, 5 months of our year was still drastically impacted by that, and where we saw other fairs throughout the province have really banger years as a result of that warm, dry summer, we didn't get the benefit of that. And so we did make a profit between Rodeo and Whoop Up Days, but not to the extent that we were expecting. So 2022 continued to be a transition year, further out than we had anticipated in our original business planning, and we did end up in a loss position on the year, as the financial statements indicate.
I want to see what he's doing.
Thank you. I'm happy to take any questions.
All right, thank you very much for the presentation. Appreciate that, Mr. Workington. Holy smoke. I do have questions. Councillor Middleton-Hope.
Just wondering if it's an appropriate time to ask questions in regards to the financials that were presented earlier, or later?
The questions that are in-camera questions that you have, or is it?
So it's a question that Mr. Matthews was referred to Mr. Workington to respond to, vis-a-vis the timing.
Is that okay?
Yeah, so
Okay,
is that an appropriate?
yeah, go ahead.
Is that an appropriate question?
Is it
I think it's actually for Mr. Wilkinson's next presentation, so it might be appropriate to wait.
All right, we'll leave it for that then. Thanks.
This is just the update and then the financials. Yeah. So outside that, I don't see any, so you can carry on with the next presentation.
Okay. Thank you. Oh, I know. Trust me, it does for me too. Both? Yeah, that's correct. Yep, yep. And both have the same title page, so it gets confusing. What's that? Right. This one just progresses on the same slide. See how it progresses. Is it going to be up or no? Okay. Thank you very much. Should I go? Should I wait? Okay. Thank you very much for having us today. This is a conversation that's been long overdue. We've been in talks about this for almost a year, and so early in 2022, we did indicate the risk of the project overages based to escalation in project cost, labor shortages, and other challenges with materials on the project. I believe in May of 2022, we were in a closed session talking about an overage of $7.8 million on the project, specifically related to those aspects, and then inclusive, of the demolition and decommission of the existing facilities on Lethbridge and District Exhibition site. At the time, we indicated that there would be significant advocacy efforts going forward, and so I'm happy to report in November of I didn't click twice, please, sorry. One more time. Thank you. In November of 2022, we saw a gift from Lethbridge County of $2 million, of which $1.567 million offsets the ask to the city of Lethbridge. The remainder of that funds has gone into support the increased operational costs of our operation, bringing on the new building here in 2023. At that time, an ask was made to the Ministry of Agriculture and Irrigation in the province. Click one more time, please. To match the remaining funds. So an ask was made to the province. Sorry, I'm out of order. I apologize. At that same time, in early 2023, the Lethbridge and District Exhibition contributed $532,000 of interest that had been accumulated over the project dating back to 2020 into the project, which offset this ask by $532,696. Since then, we've also seen the largest commitment from the Tourism Relief Fund in Western Canada, which is a federal program through PrairieScan. Their total investment of over $3.5 million into the project, which has an offset to this project of over $1.6 million, which brings that ask down to $4.6 million and change. At the time of when we invested the interest funds back into the project, we actually had asked to the Ministry of Irrigation and Agriculture for the matching $6.3 million at that time, and that ask remains on the table. And so currently, the ask to the committee to take to council would be the click again, please. The $4,684,322.82. And sorry, I'll correct that. It's up to that amount. We have seen escalation in our our deconstruction and our demolition of our existing facilities since our original conversation at the 7.8, but that is the amount that we are taking forward, up to that amount to City Council. And I will also add that the ask to the province remains on the table, and conversations are ongoing both with government as well as opposition pending the outcome of the provincial election later this spring. Thank you very much. I'm happy to take any questions.
Well, Councillor Middleton Hope, here's your question.
Imagine that. So the $4.684 million will be reduced if we receive funding from other partners, like the provincial government, for example.
At this time, it is not anticipated that that number will reduce. We may not be required to spend that total amount. However, there's an equal, or actually a larger ask into the province to offset the $6 million and change to offset the remainder of the demolition and decommissioning. We are in ongoing conversations with the federal government about alternative funding programs. The federal funding programs that we're looking at would be to offset the loan that we had to take on the project, the 17.824, that council approved us to take through the municipal borrowing program.
Right, okay. So then the question is there any reason that we can't stagger the requests pending additional funding? Or is there any reason, so take the additional funding component off of it, is there any reason why we can't stagger the requests? So you're asking for $4.684 million. Are you asking for a check today, or can you take a down payment on that today and move forward with incremental, incremental components of that $4.684 million?
That's an excellent question, and something that actually just came up this morning. And so there will be some initial, immediate planning and engineering that will need to be done on the existing pavilions to prepare for decommissioning and deconstruction. And so therefore we could look at a model, and I apologize, I don't have exactly what that number would be in the very short term, the immediate term, but we could certainly look at a model that would be staggered with a down payment system to ensure that engineering and elements occur right away, and then work through the progress payments of the project timeline.
Right, because I think Mr. Matthews would agree that tying up those funds for this specific purpose, there may be other uses for those funds, and if we're able to stagger payments, that might be more palatable. And that's something that could be done?
I think that's something we could certainly look at. And again, I don't have the valuations particularly of what that looks like, but we could certainly look at something like that. And if I may add to that, Councillor, depending on the method that would of deconstruction of the facilities, and that would be part of the RFP process, it could take anywhere from 18 months to 3 years to deconstruct those facilities.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
Carlson?
Thank you, Mayor Hagan. Thanks, Mr. Warkentin, for this. I guess just a question, if you can help me in total. What was the original project cost that was funded from the province, from the city, and from the loan?
Absolutely. The original project was $70.6 million, $27.8 million from the Government of Alberta through the Ministry of Agriculture, 25 from the City of Lethbridge, and 17.824 from through the municipal borrowing approved by council. That loan was taken on by Lethbridge and District Exhibition.
Thank you. And after the escalation of costs, what is the current total budget projected?
We're just shy of $80 million.
So it's escalated by about 10 million is what?
Correct.
Thank you. And at this point, has the province come up with any extra dollars? Because they were the first in. They did all the announcements, took all the credit, if I recall. So have they come to the table thus far with any extra dollars, or is that still pending?
that is still pending. We are still in conversations, both with government as well as opposition, as I said, pending the outcome of the spring election. Both are very aware of the requirements to get this project across the line, and both are very engaged in this project getting across the line. But to answer directly, there are no additional funds to date.
Thank you. And final question, I guess for me right now is I appreciate the difficulty in coming forward and talking about, okay, things have gotten escalated. We're a bit strapped right now. We're in the same boat.
Of course.
What's the consequence if council looks in our purses and wallet, which are the taxpayers' purses and wallets, and says, we don't have it either? What's the end consequence if we can't come up with $5 million?
So there's a series of things that could come of that result. The first thing would be, the most immediate and most obvious to the general public would be that the existing pavilions would stand and parking would still be an operational challenge for guests and visitors coming to the facility. Mirror that with the fact that this facility will take us into a different level of visitor economy opportunity, and visitors coming to the community, we won't be able to meet that ultimate expectation level that this facility can bring to the community, and ultimately the biggest return from an economic opportunity, as well as some of the other potential offshoot opportunities financially that could come to the city of Lethbridge for this center opening. The facilities remaining pose, obviously there's health and safety risks there. Those buildings are approaching, I should say, the end of useful life, and that was part of the reason for building new. There's a significant operational challenge involved with maintaining those buildings and keeping them up. It's not as simple as just turning them off. There's some security concerns. We'd have to hoard them. We'd still have to heat them. And so that would further leverage our organization, which would turn this conversation into an operational challenge. We're not there today. We don't want to be there. But in order for this facility to fully meet its operational capacity and opportunity for not just the city of Lethbridge, but also for the region, those facilities ultimately need to come down, the existing ones.
Okay, and it sort of spurs a secondary question. Looking to the future, there's possibilities of other funders coming to the table. If council says, yes, here we scrape together the $5 million today, and 2 years from now, those other opportunities haven't materialized, what happens? Is it you back in front of council again saying,
Again, there's multiple tiers to this. So the first tier would be, yes, so we're evolving our operation, and there's a lot we don't know about the operation and the future potential. And so we're changing our operation to be revenue focused and driving business to the community. It's something I've stood behind for my entire time since we first broke ground on this building. That being said, those are unknowns at this point in time as to what that full potential will be. And so I would say the second worst case scenario is we would be back in front of council. The worst case scenario would be that our organization wouldn't be able to maintain anymore, and ultimately the keys would turn over to the city of Lethbridge as the owners of the land. That I will stress that is absolute worst case scenario.
thank you, and thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Acting Mayor Schmidt-Rempel.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much, Mr. Workington, for bringing this forward. What are your revenue projections for the next year, given that you'll be opening in a short few months here? What kind of bookings do you have? What are you projecting for the rest of this year?
So I don't have those numbers with me today. I can share them with council. We are anticipating an uplift of revenue for fiscal 23 as when we open the new facility. I will say at this time we are projecting a loss position, and we are currently working with outside financial consultants as well as our board to mitigate that loss position, as well as external operational funders who provide us annual funding.
Thank you very much. And yes, if you could forward that on to us, that would be great.
Councillor Campbell?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thanks, Mr. Workington. I just wonder, I know you've been really advocating for the center, and you've been to Ottawa, and you've talked to a lot of people. I just want to get a sense of the sort of optimism or the sense of direction that you're portraying to these people, and what kind of feedback are they giving back to you as you look forward and saying this is going to be the agri-food hub of Canada?
Yeah, and I think I'll turn to a recent example that we had where Travel Alberta actually funded a trade mission where members of council and administration were on the junket with us to National Ag Day in Ottawa. And so we held an event the night before National Ag Day, really as that national kickoff of this venue. And the general feedback I received from that, one, we had between 200 and 250 major agricultural partners and associations in that room talking about Lethbridge as the center of agriculture. The second piece to that is there aren't other ag societies doing what we're currently doing on the national stage. That was a common thread I heard, that the way we're advocating for business to come here is different than a sales piece. The opportunity for agriculture in Southern Alberta is different than any in the country. I did a bit of research earlier in the year on this very topic. If you look at major centers that agriculture is their main economic driver, Lethbridge truly is that destination of Canadian agriculture, and it's an easy conversation to have in those places because there is significant investment opportunity in that. And that's ultimately the conversation we had with the County of Lethbridge as well, is that we'll bring opportunity into this community. That I have no doubt. And then there will be residential benefit here in the city of Lethbridge. There'll be commercial benefit both in the city of Lethbridge and in the county of Lethbridge. And it's the long-term impacts of this facility. And there is and so I guess directly to your piece, there hasn't been an agricultural specific facility. And so when we talk to the Canadian beef producers or the cattle feeders or even the potato growers of Alberta, et cetera, there isn't an agricultural specific center that is not in a Toronto, Banff, places like that, and it becomes exceptionally expensive in those sites. So we provide a state-of-the-art facility, and part of the funding we received from PrairieScan was probably the most digital facility in the country when we open, that's focused on bringing more agricultural investment here, and the agriculture community is seeing that and taking interest in what we're doing. There just is a long lead time on those to actually be able to quantify that ROI for you today.
Great, and good news to hear that. And this is probably an unanswerable question, but if all the ducks that you had in the pond came, if they all came in a row, can you foresee coming up with the $5 million that you're asking for, or are you saying if everything happened, we're still going to have to come to council and look for that additional $5 million based on matching grants and that sort of a thing, or is there a scenario that you can get this covered?
At this point in time, I do not believe there's a scenario that we can go forward without this funding. From an operational perspective, long term, there is, but we need to get the center open and performing before we'll see those benefits that could come later from a fully functional state-of-the-art trade and convention center here in town.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Campbell. And I do not see any further questions in the queue. Oh, sorry, Councillor Palladino.
Sorry, I have a quick question, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. The 4.68 million left, is that primarily, did I hear you right, to decommission and demolish the two older buildings?
Almost. It's currently 3 facilities are slated to come down, and it is entirely dedicated.
And maybe I've been watching too much Salvage King, but is there any value in the steel in that building?
Yeah, so in our So these numbers are actually going to our board committee on Friday. That one particular number is one that we don't actually know until we know, one, the method. So there is opportunity in the salvage value, yes, to put a value to it. Until we know the method of decommission and who is doing the decommissioning, we won't actually know what that dollar value is. But there's a significant amount of steel beams in that
And they're big.
and other material that could be salvaged, yes.
Thank you.
Councilor Carlson?
Mayor, thank you, Councillor Palladino, for making sure that I'm not the only one who loves Salvage Kings. It's a great show. I think, just following up on Councillor Middleton Hope's question about staggering, perhaps, when is the drop dead date that you and your organization needs a commitment from the city of Lethbridge?
We will need a commitment from a financial standpoint before this summer. Ideally, best case scenario, we start hazardous waste abatement in those facilities immediately following their closure, which is when we open the new facility, and we can do that through the summer months, which tightens our timeline as best we can. If we have to prolong that into the winter, it becomes more expensive to do. And then we can start demolition immediately following hazardous waste abatement.
Okay, thank you for that. And I don't know, Councillor Middleton Hope, if you're contemplating a staggered or a scheduled, but is there anything that we could hear today on timeline costs, or is it you need the entire check April 23rd?
No, I will take it April 23rd. No, I'm kidding. But in reality, we've only just posed that question to ourselves this morning, and so please allow me some time to come back with what that could look like. All I know today is that there is an upfront payment for some of the engineering and the assessment work that would need to happen before work could actually begin. I do not have that dollar figure, and so I would hate to commit to that today, but I'd be happy to work with administration or any member of council to work on what that schedule would look like.
Thank you, appreciate that. Final question, that if I can, Mr. Mayor, through you to city manager or designate. If council were interested in finding this amount of money, we do have some money in our CIP currently, but there are certain restrictions on different pots of money, what you can use it for, what you cannot. Do we have any unrestricted funds available, or funds that would be applicable to this? Because some of it is, I don't know if it's still called MSI or if they've already changed to the local something framework. But or is that we just say, Daryl, figure it out, where we'd fund this from?
So, Your Worship, to Councillor Carlson, and so two different pieces of it. And within the CIP, there is a component inside there that's that matching amount for grants. Behind that amount is how we fund it. And so similar to what you were saying, Councillor Carlson, typically what happens behind it is my team will take a look and whether or not we have grants, and it depends on the project, whether we can apply the grant dollars to that and keep the city dollars. It still doesn't change the overall pot of money though. So it's still the same dollars, and whether or not we put it to this or we put it, have it as remaining CIP funds outside of that particular pot of money, it's just that we're moving around in behind it. So what we do is we will take a look in the background on those funds, and depending on what council approves out of that $10 million pot, we will look if it's eligible for grant purposes, keeping our reserve balances intact. But if it's not eligible, then we'd have to use our reserve pieces. So, long story, again, the reality is behind the scenes, we will manage that.
Thank you for that. And now a final question, truly final, Mr. Mayor. We had recently a community project came forward. They saw cost escalation of 50%. onto their, council said, suck it up, to be blunt. And we said, no, either you find a way to use the money we allocated, because we know that a lot of our CIP projects are experiencing exactly the same kind of pressures. Inflation has hit us all. Supply chain issues has hit us all. Would spending half of our reserve pot cause you any concern that then we can't complete our own projects, A, and B, leave us unavailable for projects that we set that aside for, knowing that we were going to need, we'll just use one, electric buses, perhaps. So do you have any concerns about taking half of our reserve capital dollars to one project?
Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Carlson, so in regards to reserve, I'm believing you're meaning the 10 million that was set aside specifically for grant matching. So that funding there, obviously that is council, and what council put that forward for was for matching for federal and provincial grant projects that may come up. And one of the examples, as Councillor Carlson, you mentioned, was, for example, the CIP matching for electric buses. It could be a matching component for it as a funding source as well, or a backstop for that if we couldn't get that. So there's always a concern in the sense that when we come through for any of our capital projects right now, we do know the economy has changed quite a bit. We are going to come back to council later in the year and take a look at our all the different projects on it, and of course you can imagine right now in the economy with years 25 and 26 projects, it's a little difficult at this stage to know. So if you spend it, if council chooses to do that, that is just reducing that pot of funding, and it just won't be available for other matching components.
Or to cover overages in our own project.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for allowing me many questions. Thank you.
Used us all now. No, thank you very much for that, Councillor Carlson. I see no further questions in the queue. Thank you very much, Mr. Workington. Appreciate your presentations.
Thanks very much. Appreciate the time.
I'll ask if there's anybody in the gallery which would like to make any other presentation on this matter. Seeing none? All right. I do have a resolution. I don't have a sponsor for this resolution. Do I have someone who could sponsor the resolution? Okay. All right. We'll move along with that. Councillor Campbell, Lethbridge District Exhibition Project Update 5.1. Be it resolved that the Economic Standing Policy Committee recommends that City Council direct administration to amend the current grant agreement with the Lethbridge District Exhibition to include additional funding of up to $4,684,322.82 from the 2022 to 2031 Capital Improvement Program funding held in reserve as matching funds for future projects, to the 2022 to 2031 Capital Improvement Program D5 Lethbridge District Exhibition Agri-Food Hub, and further be resolved that Economic Standing Policy Committee direct that the closed meeting discussions with respect to the Lethbridge District Exhibition Project Update remain confidential pursuant to Section 16, business interest of a third party, 21, harmful to intergovernmental relations, 24, advice from officials, and 25, harmful to economic and other interests of a public body of the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. And first open it up to any questions on the resolution. My colleagues, Councillor Middleton Hope.
So we had a discussion in regards to staggered payments on this. Clearly, the motion doesn't have any of that contemplation. If this were to be adopted by the Economic Standing Policy Committee and then forwarded to Council, would there be an opportunity in there to amend the language to incorporate something along the lines of a staggered allocation of funds?
It's quick. I don't know who it's
Mr.
to,
Matthews.
but yes, we could. Oh, okay, Mr. It's coming to, if it's coming to a council meeting, that's where, yeah, you could make a change.
And Mr. Workington said he could work with
Yeah.
So I believe, Mr. Mayor, to Councilor Milton Hope, what you're referring to is a progress payments, and if we could split out the motion here and actually come some information on this forward, I think that what you would do is just split the motion on this and have direct administration to work with the Lethbridge Exposition to come up with what those progress payments would look like. Because I think Mr. Workington at this point said that, you would have to take a look at a few bits, some information to make sure it wouldn't just necessarily be equal amounts.
Okay, thanks.
Then to amend that so that when it's sent to council, or that would make the most sense, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Matthews, as you're mentioning, is change this now so that when it gets to council, or the resolution be to work with Mr. Workington and an exhibition at this time and those numbers would come to council?
I would think that you just put in the resolution now to make that, and then go through, I'll look to the city clerk and make sure I'm not saying things wrong here, but let it come to city council in that direction, and then we would give us a little bit more latitude to come back at a later date to an SPC or to council with that change.
Okay. So to an SPC may be better prior than coming, okay.
That motion can be amended now, or the mover can take that as a friendly? Oh, sorry.
I'll take friendly.
Got friendly.
Yeah,
All right.
Call Rusty.
With that, will we get that up on this, we'll capture that information? Do you want to just take a couple minutes here, and while we craft this up, and we'll be back, just give it 3-4 minutes, if that's okay, 5 minutes? We get okay, and we'll be right back. All right, thank you very much for your patience. I do have a resolution here, actually a referral motion from Councillor Middleton Hope. It's be it resolved that the Economic Standing Policy Committee refer this item to administration to work with the Lethbridge District Exhibition to provide progress payment amounts for the requested funds and the current operating forecast, and return to the April 19th, 2023 Economic Standing Policy Committee meeting. And furthermore, the rest that we had already read through previously, the be it resolved. So the referral motion will put this forward to April 19th with everything that is below the referral motion, as well as the, yeah, if we make it a little, as well as the progress payment amounts and requested funds that they worked with administration. So any questions from council on that? Councilor Carlson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So just for clarity for us around the table and anyone here, is Economic is not making any recommendation to council right now. We're asking for some more information, some further work to be done to come back to this committee, and then we will make a recommendation to council. Just so everyone is clear. Possibly.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, Councilor Middleton Hope.
Just a question in regards to predicting work schedule and or project schedule. I'm wondering if that could be included as a part of the discussions between Mr. Workington and administration. So it would be nice to know not only what the projected costs are and when those would occur, but what work is going to be done for the dollars that we are being asked to allocate, and what kind of a timeline we're looking at in terms of the commencement of those initiatives. Mr. Workington made a comment earlier in regards to engineering and a host of other preliminary initiatives that would probably have to be done prior to the June date. So I would want to see what that would look like in terms of the allocation of funds and the specifics in terms of what we're getting for those dollars. Does that make sense?
I believe, is that not captured in the Mr. City Manager?
I don't see it.
Is that not captured in there though, with progress payments, requested funds, and the current operating forecast? Is that not part of that, or should be more?
Perhaps what we can do is we can determine whether it's clear enough to administration and to Mr. Workington. Do they understand it the same way?
Mr. Workington can weigh in, but I think, you know, the description that would be provided in something like an operating forecast, I think it would lead to exactly that. I don't know if, Mike, you have any other thoughts?
If I may, I just want to make a clear distinction between what I understand our operating forecast to be. That was to Councillor Schmidt-Rempel's question around our projected revenues, and that's the work we're undergoing with MMP that will need to be approved by our board. I did not read the resolution to include your request, Councillor Milton Hope, around what we were getting on that work schedule. And again, I'll reiterate the point I made earlier. We could do that with some key dates, but it would be very difficult until we went through the RFP process and knew, again, back to Councillor Palladino's question about salvage value, until we know the method of deconstruction and who's doing the deconstruction, it'll be difficult to hit the timeline for sure.
Right, but I think it would be important to understand that if we're being asked to allocate specific monies, and those monies are going to come to you in a staggered allocation as opposed to a single infusion of capital, then we would need to know what those target dates are, and those target dates would be predicated on the work that you need to get done. So the first one that you said was we have engineering requirements as a part of that. That would have to be completed before June. So we now know that there's at least one date that we can look forward to.
That's correct, and it would just be kind of key process start times and then what those would need to.
So the question then to the city manager is, do we now understand it from the same perspective, and does the motion encapsulate what we're talking about, that you will be provided with target dates that Mr. Workington's group will be expected to hit within it's like a meteor coming close to Earth. they'll be expected to hit at some point, and then the funds would be allocated, assuming that the council approves it.
Yes, but through the mayor, I might suggest, as our memories fade, probably better to put it in black and white and identify that, you know, the milestones piece right in there, and then it's clear for everyone.
I see Mr. Westerson is now getting ready to amend the, the motion again. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Yeah. So it's yours, you can amend it, and you can do your own friendly to yourself. That's pretty, well, yes.
I see Mr. Workington and Ms. Brown are working on it.
Mr. Workington is working on it. Oh, Mr. Westerson. The other Workington. You're good with that? Mr. Councilor Midland, nope, okay.
Yep.
Deputy Mayor Parker.
Thank you very much. Just semantics a little bit. Operating forecast, operating budget forecast. Is that what make you feel better? Is that what you're thinking, Mr. City Manager? Operating budget forecast, or is that implied the same thing? Okay, good. I just want to make sure that you felt comfortable as well.
All right. I have no further questions, so to open the debate, Councilor Middleton. Oh,
All right, can I actually ask a clarification question on Councillor
Absolutely.
Parker's point just there? The piece about our budget operating forecast, as I mentioned, we're working with MMP to completely change what our financial model looks like as a result of the significant operational challenges our organization has to go through opening up this facility. Just based on the timelines for submission is my question, is that actually won't go to our board for approval until our April 5th board meeting. Would it be okay to submit it following that as opposed to the regular timelines for submission?
yeah, when would be the submission for the 19th? It's the date again was April 19th, and that's the week prior, is it, or 10 days prior? Madam City Clerk?
The agenda's published a week prior, so I think we would like that more.
If it could be like the 6th, like next day you'll get it approved, it'll be prepared on approval on the night of the 5th, or sorry, the 6th is your
The
meeting?
5th, the Wednesday the 5th is our,
5th, so if it's the 6th to get that in?
6th would be great.
That'll be fine, the 6th, if you get it in the next day?
correct, and then if for some reason that's not approved, it would just have to be in draft form coming
Draft
to
form.
council.
Okay, that works, Madam
That
City
works
Clerk?
because
Okay,
it's a holiday Friday, holiday Monday,
Okay.
so that.
perfect. Mr. City Manager?
Thank
Just
you.
in the essence of tight timelines, I was going to say it didn't have to be April 19th on our side. If we left that more open, Mr. Matthews, and,
Give a little more time?
yeah.
If it's the following,
I know it's tight for Mr. Workington.
That makes it much tighter on the back end to actually get some of the work started. So if we can, I would prefer to
can't do it
keep.
if you have the 6th? Okay. Nope, that should be fine.
Sor-
So we've got-
Sorry to jump in.
Yeah. All right. To start debate, Councilor Midland Hope.
Here you go, open and closing.
Open and closed, done. All right, with that, I guess the question's been called. All in favor? Opposed? And you got it? Belinda, okay. Thank you. That carries. Thank you very much. Appreciate you coming in. Okay. I'm going to go until the call comes in. Oh, missed call thing today. Oh, no, 30 minutes ago. That was a different one. All right. Next, I have 5.2, Mr. Malcolm Kirk Mearns, Mike Mulroy, I'm sorry, Lethbridge Curling Club, Lethbridge Curling Club request for major event grant funding. I'll turn time over, first of all, to Mr. Malcolm to be able to introduce your guests.
Thank you very much, members of Economic SPC. Today I get to make a brief return and put on my former role in Opportunity Lethbridge to support the team as Ms. Slovak is unable to be here today. So the purpose of today's presentation is to request from Lethbridge Curling Club for a letter of support and $900,000 in cash and in kind from the Major Community Event Support Grant to support the hosting of the Canadian Curling Trials in 2025. City administration has reviewed the proposal and believe it to be in alignment with the intent of CC 55, which is the Major Community Event Hosting Policy. The major event grant is supported by $1 million in funding through City Council's operating budget at a rate of $250,000 a year. So currently, there's adequate funding in place, albeit this request would, if approved, would commit 90% of the budget in the cycle. A reminder that Council on Economic SPC is anticipating a revised request from Play On in April. However, that has not yet been finalized and is coming forward after this one, but just to put it on the radar. With that, I'll turn things over to Mr. Mearns and Mr. Mulroy of the Lethbridge Curling Club to provide the details on their proposal.
Good afternoon, Mayor Higgins, City Council members, City of Lethbridge management and staff. My name is Mike Mulroy, and together with Kirk Mearns, I'm co-chair of the bid committee working towards hosting the Canadian Curling Trials here in Lethbridge in 2025. Curling Trials, also known as the Roar of the Rings, have been held every 4 years since 1997, crowning a men's and women's national representative to wear the maple leaf at the Olympics the following year. Most recently, in 2021, Saskatoon played host to the trials, and even though they were still in the thick of managing COVID restrictions, they saw attendance of over 107,000 people, millions of viewers on live television, and a substantial economic impact for the city. Because the trials were only held every 4 years, the list of cities having hosted this prestigious event is a short one, including cities like Brandon, Regina, Halifax, Edmonton, Ottawa, and Saskatoon. Lethbridge would be the only city on this list that would not only have hosted the trials, but every other curling championship in the sport of curling. We understand that we are here quickly on the heels of the Brier, but the calendar is really the driver of this event and the ability to be able to participate in it as a host. Our history of hosting successfully other major curling championships includes the 2007 Scotties Tournament of Hearts, the 2012 Ford World Women's Curling Championships, the 2017 World Mixed Doubles and Senior Championships, the 2019 World Men's Curling Championships, which had a record attendance of over 69,000 people, and the 2022 Tim Hortons Brier, which provided a major post-COVID economic boost to the city of Lethbridge and surrounding communities. We expect the competition for this event to be quite fierce, as the cities that consider themselves championship destinations, they understand more and more the positive benefit and impact these events bring to their communities. Lethbridge Curling Club once again is taking the lead on this bid. From the very beginning, we have made it our goal to include all the major stakeholders in taking on this project. We've received letters of support and have the support of all the major stakeholders, most notably being Curling Alberta, the NMAX Center, Service Sports Center, the Lethbridge Hurricanes, Tourism Lethbridge, Lethbridge Sport Council. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Kirk for a few more items of information.
Thanks, Mike. Good afternoon. As we move forward with this bid, it would take a few seconds just to look at very quickly the economic impact that these events have. And when we have the Brier very recently in our rearview mirror, we can look at very relevant numbers as to the amount of dollars that it drives for the community, with direct $13.2 million of expenditures. There's like a $10.8 million in visitor spending in our community. The economic impact of these events is proven and well-founded. But I'm going to move on from that a little bit, because I think we understand that. We really want to talk about the local event benefits. How does this help our community? How does this council investing $900,000 in our community, where does that pay us back, and what does that look like? For the Curling Club, we receive the funds from the 50/50. Those funds allow us to fund our diversity programs, our junior curling programs, our senior programs, our Special Olympic programs, all of those type of programs that we give and that we allow for our members to have. of the money that comes back is over 2,000 room nights that Curling Canada they guarantee, just in competitors, officials, Curling Canada people. So back there's 2,000 room nights. It's a lot of money that comes directly back. Things like the Patch, where we get to showcase and highlight local talent in front of 2,000 people a night in our Patch. As an aside, the Chevelles, everybody knows who the Chevelles are. The Chevelles are a great local band, one of our best ambassadors. They played in I believe it was the 2007 Scotties at the Patch. Since that time, the Chevelles have been invited to and have played at every major Curling Canada event from here to Halifax. They're the first call that the Curling Canada Entertainment puts out because they want the Chevelles. Those are direct benefits to our community. Working with Aaron and Lethbridge Tourism, the opportunity to create adjacent events to make this a complete, like a 360-degree celebration of our city. That isn't just for curling fans. It's for everybody in the city to witness and to see their city highlighted for 10 days as the center of not only the curling community, but all eyes on Olympics, all eyes on who our people are and what happens in Lethbridge. We get to see the bridge highlighted in 75 hours of TSN coverage where there's not a big hole in it that the filmmakers put in it. We get to show the whole bridge. We attract new curlers. We get to showcase our sport. We get to attract young curlers and old curlers. We get to outreach to newcomer communities and all the other communities that we have, bringing them into our sport, bringing them into an overall culture of welcoming and open arms and things where we can really work with and make our community, and this is a commitment that the Curling Club has had for a lot of years. Creating this sense of a civic pride where we share common memories, emotions, we share common experiences where not just curlers, but everybody gets involved. Everybody gets that little bit of that hype. Oh, did you see that? It's all wonderful. It's wonderful to see our city highlighted across this nation and talked about. 75 hours of TSN live coverage. Untold hours, untold amounts of media, of social media, earned media where they're talking about us. Understanding that once the city is named where the Olympic trials will be, for at least 2 years, every curling event that happens, they will talk about who is qualified to go to Lethbridge. How do you get to the Olympic trials? They're all, and they will mention Lethbridge, Lethbridge, Lethbridge. We will have 2 years of people mentioning that the Olympic trials are in Lethbridge. And I think that when we start to showcase, and as we were just talking about a major facilities being built, doing things like the Briar, doing things like Olympic trials, shows to everybody that we can host major events here. Sporting events, non-sporting events, convention events, that we have the infrastructure, the volunteers, and we have the ability as a city to host major events. The bid details are very simple. The curling trials run from November 22nd to 30th. Curling Canada will take over the venues about November 16th and will be out December 1st. Those dates have all been confirmed with NMAX, Service Center, and the Hurricanes, who are very much a big part of supporting us doing this. As Curling Canada hosts the trials, Curling Canada underwrites the risk and is responsible for the budget. So once we have approved it, we make our bid and we have it, Curling Canada assumes all risks at that point. No money will change hands. Of the $900,000, none of that money changes hands until after the event is over and all the accounting is done. Part of the bid is it's $900,000 in cash and in kind. So it's the rental of the MX Center, the rental of the Service Center. All of those things will be accounted for afterwards. There is no bidding fee. If we do not get the bid, there is no cost at all to the city for anything. There's no bid fee. There's nothing that we would have to do, and we don't send any money with the bid whatsoever. This will be the top 9 men's and ladies teams from across Canada. And the focus for those weeks will be on NMAX Centre, Service Sports Centre, where we can really bring our community together. The amount of exposure that these places get is it's phenomenal. So just to finish, our support will be of $900,000 cash in kind. Looking for obviously a letter of support that goes with that. And with that, I thank you for your attention, and we'll answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mertz, and congratulations. Hard to believe it's just been over a year since we hosted the RIAR. It was pretty exciting because I remember a lot of things, a lot of mandates were lifted and all that. Was an exciting time for not only Lethbridge but the country. Is there anyone else in the audience who would like to speak on this at this time? For a second time and for a third and final time, I'll entertain questions from SBC. Any questions? Councillor Carlson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Mulroy, Mr. Mearns, for bringing this forward today. Just maybe help me out, the $900,000, there's not a lot of financial information in the package. Where does that number come from?
It's the bid amount that Curling Canada, when you get a bid document, Curling Canada just tells you what the minimum bid amount is for the, to bid on it. When we bid on the Briar, it was $1 million. It's just, it's a overall bid amount that they request.
Okay, so thank you. So, because no dollars change hands until the accounting at the end, but it's going to be $900,000 if that's what they're saying. So, I was unclear on.
Yeah, I guess what happens is we commit the $900,000. Of that $900,000, then Curling Canada says, okay, well, we'll rent your NMAX Centre and pay you for that. We'll rent your service centre and pay you for that. We'll rent. So they will start to spend it back. So at the end, and you would have to go to either your city treasurer or to NMAX as to what the actual check was written. I don't believe it was. I know it wasn't. There was not a check written for $1 million to Curling Canada, but I don't have that number.
Okay, thank you for that. Are there other organizations that in the community? You've got lots of support. That's awesome. Any other dollars? I noticed in the package it was heavily on hotel rooms. Is Lethbridge Lodging Association coming up with dollars, or would that be later down the pipe?
At this point, looking for the bid amount, no, there is nobody else involved. Once we put the bid in and we get approved and we are the bid, at that point then we can reach out to the province of Alberta, we can reach out to local funding sources, and we can start to look at other funding sources. But we can't do that, certainly with the province, until you actually are awarded the bid. You can't, they don't supply money for bids.
Okay, I think, would that then go to reducing the amount? We say we'll backstop 900K, but then the province comes forward with some, outside groups come forward with some. Does that reduce our 900K, or does it just go to, because I think Curling Canada, you said,
Curling Canada
holds the budget.
Curling Canada holds the budget, and Curling Canada will receive all of that money that comes in and spend it. But we will get it, and I know that the city should get a full accounting of where everything comes from and what was spent and where it is.
It will be spent, but it would not reduce?
Not necessarily, no.
Okay, thank you.
No, we are bidding $900,000.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Councillor Milton Hope.
Thank you. Thanks for the presentation. I have a few questions. The indication in the material is $900,000 and in kind. I'd like to see an accounting of what the in kind is comprised of, and I think that could be provided by going back to the city of Saskatoon and or any other cities that have hosted this event to give us some indication of what the in kind request might look like. Because we have security costs, we have policing costs, we have additional potential EMS costs. So there's a whole host of additional costs that may be a part of this, this request. And I think we would probably have a pretty good idea if we went back to some of the cities that have hosted. They could give us an idea. Thoughts?
Yeah, it's important to understand, it's the $900,000 is the total. The in-kind will come out of that $900,000. It's not $900,000 and in-kind.
That's what it says.
I'm sorry, I sorry if it was written improperly.
Oh, I see. Okay, so it is, the in-kind is included in the 900,000.
Correct.
Okay, so.
And
still-
we would, I'm sorry.
Yes, but still, I think there'd be some benefit to have an idea of what that in-kind looked like.
I don't think we need to go to another cities. We just had a Briar here. We know exactly what that in-kind looks like. The city could certainly supply a full accounting of that, city treasurer, to you, Councillor. And I think that.
I think that'd be helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah, good. Okay, thank
Yeah,
you.
for sure.
Skin in the game. So what can we expect from Curling Canada and/or our local organization in terms of, would they be providing in-kind as opposed to offsetting some of the costs of the 900,000? Or is the bid in excess of 900,000 and there are funds coming in from other locations as well?
The bid itself is $900,000. That's what Curling Canada asks for from the host community. I'm sure that they take into account there will be other money coming in. They sell sponsorships. It's a very large event to put on. The total cost of putting the event on, I don't have at my fingertips. But there's many costs to put this event on. It's a large event. Bringing in TSN, doing all of that is a lot. So the host committee and the host city, they say, this is what we want you to bid. How they account for the rest of the 8 to 10, whatever millions of dollars the event costs, right? Again, I think you could probably go back to your city treasurer and look at the Briar to see where that kind of breaks down.
Just one last comment. You indicated showcasing the bridge. You're talking about the high-level bridge, not the third bridge.
Well, if we could get the third bridge by 2025, we would be in good shape, but it'll be the high-level bridge for now.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome, Councillor.
Councillor Campbell.
Thank you. Thanks for the presentation. Very exciting to have curling back in Lethbridge again. I want to just direct this to Mr. Malcolm, perhaps, just about the major community event grant. Just a reminder how much is in that grant, and a reminder what Play On was looking for. And I know that they're still in talks. So and where does it, if we give out 900,000 today, or when council approves it, what's left?
Thanks for the question. So council approved a budget of $1 million over the 4 years. So accounting, I think it's across $250,000 a year. Play On had come with a request of $200,000, $50,000 a year for a 4-year event. And the reason they went back is because they were unable to host the event in 2023. So at the point of when they went back, they were looking at $150,000 for 3 years. So if you just add those two requests, it would be more requests than there is budget. It's not necessarily unprecedented, and the city treasurer may be able to comment, but in years past, the major event grant has utilized more than has been initially approved in the budget by funding funds in other sources. So,
turn it over to the treasurer.
So, through the acting mayor, or deputy mayor, I should say, to
Both of us.
through both of you. There we go.
Go ahead.
To Councillor Campbell. Sorry, I'm fumbling through that. So there's actually a little bit more money there. So there's a bit of carryover from last year as well. There's $177,000. So the total funding inside of the major hosting grant is $1,177,000. So in regards to Play On, although they're coming forward, to take off the $200,000 off that amount, that would still leave you a little bit of room inside of here for both of these asks at this time. Now, that being said, that's the full amount for the remaining of the 4 years.
When does Play On intend to come back with their last request?
I believe they're targeting to come back at the April SPC, but I don't have confirmation. Do we know? Yeah, we don't have confirmation right now, but that's what they were targeting.
Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Councillor Carlson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Matthews. You sort of highlighted one of the concerns I've always had. When we first put the major event hosting grant in place, at the time, around the table, and I think it was just myself and Councillor Parker who were sitting at the table at that time, it was to sort of build a kitty to bid on these major events. And ever since we put it in, we basically go broke in the first 6 months, as we're doing right now, of our term, which I do understand a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush, as they say, but how, we bid $1 million on the Briar. And we know how exciting that was and the returns we got on that. How does this compare to the Briar? Because it's basically the same amount of dollars. It seems a much smaller, in my mind.
Yeah, it's not quite a Briar, and for a lot of people in the curling community, it is bigger. It's the only Curling Canada event of this type that has both men's and women's teams competing at the same venue. So it's a combination that you don't see anywhere else. It's only held every 4 years, right? It is a very special event. It determines who our Olympic qualifiers will be. It determines who is going to go to France and curl for Canada. So not only the eyes of all Canadians, curlers, but Olympic watchers that care about the Olympics. The eyes of the world, the eyes of the international community always want to know who are Canada's representatives going to be at the Olympics, because they will go in there as the favorites going in. So from a perception with the Briar, because the Briar's every year and because the Scotties are every year, there's sort of a thing. This is every 4 years. So it's not on the radar now. As it builds to I think I might have killed the mic. As it builds, add it to the 900 grand.
I was going to say, well, take that off. There's $1.
As it builds to the actual qualifier, it becomes very big. It becomes the topic. Even when they talk about Scotties, they'll talk about the winner qualifying to go to Lethbridge. When they talk about the Briar for the next 2 years, they'll talk about the Briar winners qualifying to go to Lethbridge. This is where everybody will want to be. Every curler in Canada will want to be in Lethbridge in 2025.
So about the same magnitude, you'd say? Is that your?
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah. Timelines. This is for a commitment today for a possible 2025. Yeah. In between there, how long until you hear? I would hate to, as we've done in the past, say we're committing all of our money to this, and now we have no dollars to chase anything else, and then we find out we were unsuccessful, hopefully not.
Yep, very good.
What's the timeline?
Right now, the bids all have to be into Curling Canada by June 30th. So once we come away from here, and if we are certainly fortunate enough to be supported financially in this, we will finish putting the bid together by June 30th. Curling Canada will finalize the host city by November of this year. We will know.
Thank you. And there are, I think you said this during the presentation, it's in the package, there are no interim costs. There's no hosting the bid committee, touring them around, et cetera, et cetera. It's all a paper package, and they just... Yes. Okay.
Correct. Curling Canada knows our city. They do not need to do site visits here. They know our arena. They know our city. They know our volunteer base.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, and I apologize if this question's already asked. I just had to get a quick emergent call there, but I'm curious to know. Thank you very much for being here, and I appreciate coming forward here. We've hear all the time about the Briar, and it was super exciting. Part of me is wondering now, as I see this, as I make the comments out there, we've hosted every single one. I guess I made a mistake, right? Is this one more?
This one more, yeah. This is one more. Okay. This is because it's only every 4 years, right? It's sort of like I said, it's not on the radar. Until it is. And this would be the only community that would do both world championships, Scotty Breyer.
Excellent. And I'm glad to hear that, you know, there's not the, really the, and I don't want to use this word, but I will, the throwaway dollars. If for some reason you're not successful, they've seen Lethbridge. They know what it's like. You've just already mentioned that, Kirk, and how you know, they're very appreciative. And I know when I was up chatting to any of the executive, they are just blown away by Lethbridge, which is fantastic. And it's due in part to the organization here and what you guys have done. So thank you very much for that. So what was the question that I had here? Oh, and that was it. There's no dollars outside, as was mentioned by Councillor Carlson. Goes in, the paperwork's done. When we get that result back, that's when some of these disbursements will go out, leading up to the in-kind, et cetera.
There will be no disbursements until after the event in November of 2025.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Councillor Carlson.
I had a question, and I think it fell out of my head. Past host cities of this, do they ever get to play again, so to speak? Like, I guess I'm going back to my original ramble about when this was first put in place, the major hosting dollars, was to build up a kitty. If we bid on this and we get the 2025, are we out for 2029? Or is there any sense in saying, let's focus on 2029 and build up the kitty? I'm assuming it's every 4 years.
So what would happen is if we can bid. We won't know what Curling Canada wants for bids for the 2029 Olympics until about 2027. So I can't even tell you it would be $900,000. I don't know what the bid would be for 2029. And I'm checking my driver's license with my birth date and the date of 2027. It would be somebody much younger standing in front of you having this conversation.
Just saying.
But yeah, just saying. Yeah, I understand where you're coming from, but I believe they are separate and equal. They have not ever given it to two cities in a row to the same, and it would be. We're here about 2025.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
And again, I'm going to apologize. I have a question for Mr. Matthews, and if this is asked, you could do it very quickly and just say, go and talk to your colleagues about it. We've got in the event hosting grant of 1 point, what is the build up? We've got some rollover, 1.167?
Oh, it's 1.177.
177. All right. Glad I didn't talk to you after the meeting. Okay. So with that, this would take up for that 4 years, but it is not dispensed for 4 years. Is what would be left after this? We're talking the three. Is there anything else that's pre-done besides we've got play on that is going to be coming back?
Or all I'm aware of at this stage here is the play on coming through.
Okay. And for a major event, usually that's something that's going to be planned out much in advance. So that's.
So the only thing I would mention on that in history, like there is other ones that come in, and I think it would be fair to say that we don't necessarily know.
Okay.
At this time frame, what will come through as other, and I'll turn it back to Mr. Malcolm.
I think the grant program, the format of it is kind of first come, first serve. There isn't an intake per se. Of course, one of the requirements is that the budget of the event be over 100,000. This event and these curling events are at a magnitude much, much larger than that. But there have been more community-focused events like Pride Fest 10th anniversary that have accessed this fund in years past. So it's open to quite a wide array of potential of events. So we're not sure who would come down or come in the future. Again, this is year one of this new operating cycle. But I guess, one thing that we would do is, unless directed by administration or by a council, is administration would keep the policy open, and if somebody came, we would be bringing forward those requests, and then there would be future decisions of the council on how to fund those or if to fund those.
Awesome. Thank you. Councillor Carlson?
Sorry, me again. I don't want to sound like a broken record, but at one point it was to try and do a strategic investment in our community to sort of know what's coming over the next 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years. I know we have some sports council and tourism folks here. May I ask a question? If they have any, I would hate to spend everything now. If there's something that, well, there is, the Briar's coming back in 2 years, so you need another $1 million. Or is there anything on the horizon that we should be alerted to? It comes back to that bird in the hand, two in the bush comment, but I'd hate to spend it all and go, man, you forgot about this, hey? That was coming.
So, thank you for the question. I do also remember when this major event grant policy was being developed and written, there was certainly talk about, yes, let's look at strategy 5 years out. And then life happened and transitions happened in organizations, and Tourism Lethbridge now has been formed, and we have a small partnership, financial partnership. So we're starting to do that work again, because I agree, we need to look. It's never an exact science, because here we have an organization that does look forwards, does strategic planning, knows how hosting events is going to support the community and their organization. That isn't the case across the board. So that's why you make the tough decisions, right? It is, we support this bid, absolutely, because we've seen the past history. But yes, things will come up in the next few years. My dream is that there is a strategy that starts to put money when we host events, to put some of that money back into the pot to be able to be more sustainable, not only to host events, but to be able to fund our sport tourism capacity, or people, and yeah, what we're doing together. Hopefully that answers.
A little bit, I guess. Thank you, Ms. Simon. I think you and Ms. Crane may know better than anyone, like, there's the giant softball tournament coming in 2 years. You know, because I don't know. So I'm hoping you can give me some comfort that we're not putting all our eggs in one basket and then have to turn down a golden basket at some point.
Thanks for the question, Councillor Carlson. Again, I'm Erin Crane, CEO of Tourism Lethbridge. And like Susan mentioned, we are working on a lot of these processes in place to ensure that doesn't happen and that we have enough to go around. But one of the things that I will bring to your attention is that we are doing a lot of advocacy work with our provincial partners and our federal partners. And while they like to see municipal involvement, I think those are things that we can leverage if those opportunities do come up in the future. We are the gateway to opportunity, and I think we need to grasp those when they come and show that, we're passionate about what we do, we're good at what we do, and we can make things happen. And then others, like our provincial partners and our federal partners, will also invest in us because we're investing in ourselves. So I don't think we should, delay and not take advantage of the opportunity. I think we need to grab it with both hands when it comes, and, then react as others come forward. I believe that that we can always find the funds out there for fantastic things that can happen in our community.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I also really enjoyed the suggestion about reinvesting some of the profits from this. How much do we make on a 50-50, Mr. Burns?
You'll have to ask AGLC where you can spend their money.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Carlson. I jotted that same thing down, actually. Money back to event hosting grant. Thank you. Mr. Matthews.
So, to members of Economic SPC, just in regards to the Briar, and this here again is one of the things that members of Economic SPC can consider. That wasn't fully funded from the event hosting grant that was also partially funded from the MRSR. So those are things that, obviously we've had other conversations today in regards to funding pots, but the reality is council could make the decision, or Economic SPC can make the decision that don't take all of it from this funding pot, if that's what you're concerned with over the period, and take some from the MRSR, so that you could look at the bid and also leave funding available throughout the rest of the 4 years. So that goes back to our earlier conversations on reserves and some of the things council has done in previous as well.
And I see, and just to that, I have a question coming from your answer there. So what we're finding is that the dollars, if we're taking from MRSR, some of it, or from event hosting, whatever that looks like, that we can still use some from both, and that's.
Once again, to members of Economic SPC, that's really council's prerogative on that, and this is where in past MRSR pieces, when I mentioned that there's a past council used up X amount of dollars of the MRSR, this is also another reason you could do that. So keeping in mind that that's available, not that's here again. There's only so many pots of money, but at the same point in time, if you're concerned in the future that you don't have enough for other things that come up over the 4 years, this is an avenue, and it was done. That's exactly what council previously did with the 2022 Briar, probably at that stage because it was already allocated, and there was no other funds.
And so I see from surplus is actually going to build on that, the MRSR each year. If we do have surpluses, I tell you what, there's not very often now with cost of things, but if there are some or accounts or surpluses, that goes back into that pot, so that may gain by the time 2025 rolls around that it has to be paid for.
So that is true. So the corporate surpluses during the budget cycle will go there automatically at the end of 4 years, the total surplus, similar to what's happening in 2022's. At this stage, I don't know what the surpluses will look like, and hopefully we will.
No crystal ball?
Yeah, no crystal ball.
All right, Councillor Middleton-Hope.
I think Mr. Matthews has pretty much nailed it. This is an opportunity now, and I think I would encourage Economic SPC to make a recommendation to council to pursue this. There are financial options that do occur on an ongoing basis during the cycle that we're currently in. So we don't know what the financial picture is going to be, but we do know that there's going to be fluctuations in this fund, in the MRSR, and in a whole host of other funds that funding could be reallocated as needed if there were additional worthy projects that came forward. Is that unfair to characterize it?
To Mr. Mayor, to Councilor Middleton-Hope, yes, historically, if you look at it, obviously that's what we could do. So there's two ways you can look at this. You can actually look at, you could either allocate the funds out of this altogether right now and then look for future ones, similar to what past ones have done. And you're right that historically we've had surpluses. Once again, though, I just don't know, and that would be something we'd have to see in the future dates as things come along.
And the way in which this fund has historically been allocated is first come, first serve. This would be first at the post.
That's correct.
Or I could guess second, considering the other one that was refused. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Carlson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If I can, Mr. Mulroy and Mr. Mearns, the $900,000 that Curling Canada says, that you need to come up with $900K. It's not, doesn't have to be from the municipality. It could be from your organization, from some.
Curling Canada doesn't care where the $900,000 comes from, no.
And this bid has to be in, did you say June?
And end of June, the bid has to be in.
In your discussions with other possible funding, I know, I keep bringing up the one Lethbridge Lodging because I know they funded things in the past. Are there any other funders out there that, say council said, we'll go $700K, can you find the $200K? Or is there time between now and then? I'm cheap.
And I get that, Councillor, and I appreciate it. Historically, it is very difficult, if not impossible, to find funding for bids. Again, it's bodies like this that can set aside money for a future that we don't know about at this point in time. For some other private things, to lock up funds for a few years is not necessarily something that they're comfortable doing, nor that they can. So for the actual bid process, this is sort of the model that works, is that we get the funding for this, and then off we go and put together a multi-million-dollar event with Curling Canada and everybody else. You're welcome.
All right, I have no further questions. I have the resolution. Thank you very much. Actually, I'll do this here.
We did that.
You did this one?
We did that one.
If each item. That was for me. For a member? Oh, you already got this.
You did it for this one. So
Okay.
there you go.
All right. So I have the resolution here from Councillor Campbell. Lethbridge Curling Club request for major event grant funding request. Be it resolved that Economic Standing Policy Committee recommends City Council approve the request for $900,000 from the major community event grant budget to the Lethbridge Curling Club in alignment with City Council Policy CC55, Major Community Event Hosting Policy, and to provide a letter of support from the City of Lethbridge to host the 2025 Canadian Curling Trials. Councillor Campbell, to open.
Sure. You know, I don't know if I can add anything to all of the positive things that have been said here, you know, other than saying curling in Lethbridge good, and it just, that's it. You know? Because, I mean, that's it, you know. Are we taking a chance? I don't think so, not at all. I mean, based on, you know, the success of all of the tournaments that we've had, and this is just continues to be another feather in the Lethbridge cap, and I look forward to, you know, having the bridge fixed from the movie, that because that was, but anyway, it is. I don't think we can go wrong with approving this, and I ask for my colleagues' support moving to council.
Councillor Palladino.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I totally agree. Hosting these types of events are a great opportunity for Lethbridge. It clearly, it's great for businesses, the restaurants, the hotels, and the like, but it's also good for the sport of curling. It attracts young people, upcoming athletes, both men and women, that will be attracted to the sport and perhaps even make an Olympic team. And we should jump on the chance to showcase Lethbridge.
Deputy Mayor Parker.
Thank you very much, and I think it's a really good news presentation. I think of all the things that we've voted on in years past in regards to bringing community events, I don't think there's ever been any pushback in regards to curling or any other event. I think this community appreciates when we invest in our community, our hotels, our restaurants, and I think it's just great for community pride as well. I think what's worth noting here is quite often when you do a bid, there's a cost of doing a bid. It could be $100,000, $200,000. I remember we put a bid in for the Canada Games a few years ago. It's a huge cost. It's a huge risk here, and this is really this is no risk. This is going to be a lot of volunteer time, a lot of people putting a bid together, and the $900,000 I think is will pay huge dividends for our community. And all you have to do is look at the successes we've had in hosting curling events, Scotties, Mix, the seniors, and of course last year the Briars. So I'll fully support this, and I know the community will fully support this as well.
Councillor Carlson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will be supporting this. I hope I raised my points of being more strategic enough that perhaps we'll start considering. I look at this outlay right now of pretty much every cent we have budgeted over the next 4 years for any other major event, and that does cause me some concern. I do like to be much more strategic and not be first past the post and winner take all. So I hope we look at maybe being more strategic, maybe doing intakes on this grant, maybe taking some of the suggestions of Ms. Crane, Ms. Iman about how to better administer this grant. But I think you're right, this would be yet another feather in our cap. We've all, I think I've seen all of you at the curling that we've hosted in the past, at least at the Patch, which is where I usually hang out. And I was given some comfort. I think Mr. Mearns said that the bid goes forward in June. We'll know by November. So it's not keeping these dollars, if we're unsuccessful, let's hope we're very successful, knock on wood. But if we're not, we'll know by November if these funds can be reallocated or hopefully we're successful. So I will be in support of this, but I hope from now on we can be a little more strategic in our planning for these things.
Excellent. I too will support this for reasons I'd mentioned before. I'm excited, you know, what's happened with this curling events over the years here in Lethbridge, and I think as Deputy Mayor Parker had mentioned, there's not many people that have come up, if I can even recall any, that have said, gosh, you wasted money on a curling event. It actually was very successful, and Lethbridge is great. Lethbridge is the place where there's the community support is fantastic. Finding volunteers has been amazing. It's something that is unlike in any other community. We don't have an issue with that, and sometimes it's last minute Lethbridge, but we do end up coming up in the end with the support that we need, and so I'll definitely support this. I think it's for going to the right cause. With that, back to Councillor Campbell.
Good, curling's still good.
Curling's still good.
Still good, and I'm also.
Oh, and I wanted to add one thing if I could.
I'm sorry, it's
I really like the idea as well, I wanted to put in, that it's men's and ladies. That is something that was awesome to see, because it's either you got the Scotties or you've got the, you know, the Briars, so I wanted to add that in. So sorry.
I'm sorry.
Councillor.
Whatever, yeah.
Yeah, curling's good.
Curling good, and I'm auditioning for the Chevelles too, so hopefully that'll happen, the patch. So with that, I mean, really, to me, this is just, let's do it. Ask for the vote.
Okay, question's been called. All in favor? All right, that passed unanimously. Thank you very much. This is still a presentation, though, still, right? All right, next we have a presentation from Mr. McNann, Manager, Lethbridge Region ATCO Natural Gas Division, regarding the ATCO franchise agreement renewal. So thank you for your patience as well as you're sitting through some exciting stuff, though, right?
You learned a lot.
Learned a lot. And you're going to audition for Chevelles, too.
I was keeping it a secret, but I am now.
Time's yours.
Thank you, Mayor Higgin, members of council and administration. Joining me today is Shane Ellis, our Vice President of Operations. So we will be co-presenting this, and if there's any questions, we're happy to answer them. And so I want to start by saying that ATCO's relationship with the City of Lethbridge goes back many years. As you can see from this slide, this franchise agreement dates back to 1940. However, under our previous name, Canadian Western Natural Gas, we were providing gas to the City of Lethbridge as far back as 1912 from the gas fields in Bow Island. And so this relationship that we had is very important to us. And we demonstrate this through our continued investment and participation in the community. So if you go to the next slide, we'll start off with just a general explanation of what a franchise agreement is. Franchise agreements exist across North America, and they're typically between a utility company and a municipality. And what they do is they give the utility the right to provide service to customers and install our infrastructure on public land. And it ensures that we are doing this to the spirit of the agreement, that we are doing it to the terms and conditions listed in the agreement. Go to the next slide. So this template it was developed as part of a collaboration between a number of utility companies in Alberta. ATCO being one, Apex Utilities, formerly AltaGas, being another one, and then with the AMA, so Alberta Municipalities Association. And so it's gone through a couple of iterations over the years. The current agreement that we have with the City of Lethbridge is based on the 2003 version because it was executed in 2012. And so the proposed version that we're coming with today is based on this 2015 version. And if you go to the next slide, you can see here that the changes between the two agreements, there's a number of them listed there, but I'm going to cite a decision from the AUC, the Alberta Utilities Commission, on the bottom that basically says many of these changes were for the purpose of updating language, revisions meant to clarify matters, so none being significant in nature. Next slide. And so the agreement term, it's a minimum of 10 years and a maximum of 20. I do believe that administration is recommending a 10-year term. I will say that there is no difference with our terms and conditions with a 10-year or a 20-year. All the terms and conditions remain the same regardless of term length. And so, like I said, I believe administration is recommending 10 years. If you go to the next slide. So the franchise fee, this is a fee charged by the municipality in exchange for the right to install energy infrastructure on municipal-owned lands. And what this fee does is it compensates for the associated restrictions on planning and development, which can be administrative or operational, among other things. And the municipality is ultimately responsible for setting the fee. You can see here it's currently set at 27% of our delivery revenue. This fee can be adjusted annually, and we work closely with administration on this. Every fall, we do send a forecast of our delivery revenue for the following year and what that translates to in terms of the amount that we remit. And you can see on the screen up there, our revenue forecast for this year, 2023, is estimated to be at $28 million, and that translates to a $7.7 million franchise fee remitted to the City of Lethbridge. Municipal taxes. So similar to the franchise fee, ECWA does collect, the City of Lethbridge does collect linear tax for our linear assets, so our pipes that are below the ground. And there's two ways of doing this. The first way is to use a portion of the franchise fee to cover that linear tax. And the second one is to collect separate linear tax in addition to the franchise fee. And this is the method that the City of Lethbridge currently uses. And I will note that this is only collected, similar to the franchise fee, from residents in this municipality only. If you go to the next slide. Distribution system expansion. So as part of our franchise agreement, as the City of Lethbridge grows, we grow at the same time. There is no direct cost to customers or to the municipality. And there is a clause below there that says that we would like to see the deep infrastructure, the water and the sewer installed first. It does reduce the number of conflicts that we see with design and construction. Cost of relocations. So one of the main benefits, I'll say, to having a franchise agreement with a utility company is that we will relocate our facilities at our own cost to accommodate municipal work, provided that those 4 bullet points I list down below are met. And this is another area that we work very closely with your various departments to ensure that this is done effectively and efficiently. And so finally, I have on here joint use of right-of-ways. This is really meant for space utilization. It's to make sure that things are optimized. Much of the energy infrastructure and communication infrastructure that we install today is done via common trench. So all the utilities, all the communication infrastructure, same trench, reduces the amount of impact on that area, and things are done, like I said, much more effectively and efficiently. And so this is where I'll end. I did include in this information packet a number of slides around what we're doing to decarbonize our energy grid. I do believe that this is related to the things that we're doing with our distribution system over the proposed term. And so we are more than happy to answer any questions from Mayor, Council on that, around that wonderful work that we're doing.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the presentation. I didn't realize that relationship goes back as far as it does. So it's great to have that relationship for that many years. It's not many relationships that last that long. So I do have questions. Councillor Carlson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, gentlemen, for the presentation. Nice to see you down in Lethbridge. Usually when we run into each other, it's in Calgary, Edmonton. Just a question on that. On the slides about the costs when relocating pipes, the last bullet was if the city is not acting as a land developer. Is that standard, or like how did that arise? Or why can't we? Maybe it's a legal question.
I I'll take a stab at that one. So there's a couple of reasons for that. When the city's acting as a land developer, typically it's selling parcels of that land. And so we're trying to put all developers on the same playing field as well. We do not pay for relocations for private developers either when they're developing lands. And typically those projects aren't known in advance. You know, the land bylaws change and the use of that land can often change as well. So what we ask is that the cost of those relocations be included in the cost of developing that land so the end users pay that cost.
Thank you. I appreciate that because in my mind, it put us on an uneven field, but if you're saying it actually just puts us on an even playing field with other land developers, that's excellent. Second question, if I can, Mr. Mayor, through you to maybe the city clerk. This is a new experience for me, that before a first reading, we have this presentation. My experience would be that we put something up for first reading, and then we go through the process and have it goes to the AUC, I guess the ones that have to review it, and then it goes for second reading to council. So I'm just curious why we're doing it in this manner.
Thanks for the question. I believe it's because with the Standing Policy Committee structure now that we'd want to get public input and have the committee, have the CITAMAC committee first and then do first reading. We could have done it the other way, first reading, then go to committee, but whatever way.
So there wouldn't be, at the council level, then there won't be a public hearing about this during second reading?
I don't think this requires a public hearing.
So this is the only, okay, thank you, that answers my question. Thank you.
If I may add one thing to City Clerk. So next steps with this, of course, would be the bylaw. There is an application that we will submit to the AUC, and as part of that, there is a requirement to put a notice in the local newspaper. So in this case, it'll most likely be the Herald. Now, it does give the public a chance to comment on this, either for or against, and depending on that feedback, there could potentially be a hearing with the Utilities Commission. Rare?
On that side. Okay, so not even here. Okay.
Yeah.
It's never happened in my experience. People don't pay much attention, but it could be part of the process.
And they, if I can, Mr. Mayor, they don't often attend our committee meetings either, but perhaps just because this was the only opportunity for the public to comment, did we ask if any members of the public had comment?
Yeah,
Oh, it's coming up? Okay, then I will shut up. Thank you.
All right, no problem. Thank you. Director, Mr. Sanchez.
Yes, I just want to add something. 100% agree with what was said before. This is similar to when we talk about the electric utility. We remember the AUC is the one that regulates and that oversees the utilities in the province, and this is part of the requirement. And we will see later, I believe next week, another presentation that is a requirement for the electric side that is coming on. And all that engagement, all that consultation happens at the AUC level like they explained. So it's very similar to what we do on the electrical side as well.
Thank you for that, Mr. Sanchez. Thank you very much for your presentation. Again, great seeing you down here in Lethbridge. You can show your face again anytime. All right, thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Next, I'll ask if there's anybody in the gallery that would like to make a comment or suggestion or anything regarding the... I'm looking back there and I'm seeing a couple. No, that's a no. You just can come up, Nick, and maybe get some. I don't know. You're good. All right. With that, I'll move on to the resolution from Councillor Palladino, ATCO franchise agreement renewal. Be it resolved, the Economic Standing Policy Committee recommends City Council provide first reading to Bylaw 6400 at the April 4th, 2023 meeting of City Council, and authorize the mayor and city clerk to sign and submit the form of application to the Alberta Utility Commission, and provide second and third reading on the return of an approved application from the Alberta Utility Commission. Councillor Palladino.
I see no downside to signing this agreement. Everybody gets gas in the city, and we're happy, so I would call a question.
Right. With that, I see no further debate, so question has been called. All in favor? Are there any opposed? Oh, that's unanimous. Thank you very much. All right, next I have from Vice Chair Middleton Hope, Closed meeting, Bowman Building Opportunities Assessment 7.2. Be it resolved that the Economic Standing Policy Committee recommends to council that, number one, that the property remains a city asset versus being divested of, and two, direct administration to lease the Bowman property to either community groups and organizations that would be selected through an open and equitable process or on the open market, and three, direct administration to execute confidential recommendation number 3 provided in the confidential report, and further be resolved that Economic Standing Policy Committee direct that the closed meeting discussions, reports, and attachments with respect to the Bowman Building Opportunities Assessment remain confidential pursuant to Section 23, Local Public Body Confidences, and 24, Advice from Officials of the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. Vice Chair Middleton Hope.
Sorry, I dozed off. Thank you, Your Worship. I appreciate that. Perhaps we can just go to questions right off the bat, and then I'd be more than happy to open it up to debate.
I see no questions. That's why I hopped over for debate. There's questions. Councillor Carlson?
I'll ask a question to clarify something. The first operative clause is basically saying, because we've had lots of discussion about divesting ourselves of the Bowman, this is saying at this point in time, Council would like to not follow that option and try and get it rented. Is that the gist?
Well, it's a very good question, because I have a similar question in regards to the operative statement number 1. Does this preclude a sale of the property? And I have, from a personal perspective, I have a degree of concern in regards to simply eliminating that off the board to begin with. It may not be an option that the city exercises anytime soon, but are we saying by agreeing to this motion that it is off the table for the foreseeable future? So that would be a question, likely over to administration, because they have all the answers.
That's my understanding.
You have all the answers?
No, I don't have all the answers. I thought, so, and councils can certainly correct me, you know, the discussion about the civic common and the greater value of the asset in terms of historic value and selling it and so forth, that we had moved beyond that to then looking at these options. That's my understanding. As I said, you feel free to correct me. And so then that's how we got to this point.
So then a question, a procedural question to the city clerk. We now vote on these three, or this motion with these 3 points. This then goes to city council, where we'll have an opportunity to debate it again?
So that's correct. This is your motion, so you can put forward whatever you want. So this was administration's recommendations. If you want to change something, now would be the time to do it. Yes, you have to go to council and it will get ratified there.
Right, and council at that point could request an amendment. Any member of council could request an amendment?
Yep, they can request it here or there.
Okay, fair enough. I'm good with that then. That's it for my debate.
All right. I take that as an
Anybody else got something to
opening and closing.
You bet.
All right. So we will take that, call for the vote. All in favor? And opposed? So just one, I don't think you need a roll call, just one opposed? Oh, 7-1. All right.
I think he was confused.
With that, we are adjourned. Thank you.